All right, welcome back. So we're now moving on to the next like major arc thing, or this is kind of like a transitionary arc. Like this episode and the next episode, or chapters 25 and 26. They do a lot of like setup and kind of a little bit of a resolution of stuff from the previous chapter, like the big kind of arc that we just went through with the arc of the arc. And exotic and all that stuff, and then we're gonna get into this exploration arc. But we start with this, and there's kind of just kind of deals with some stuff, and this chapter and the next chapter are kind of like a transitionary, like I said. So we start off and we go to visit Anderson, and he's feeling better. He's finally like okay to talk. He's also ripped and hot as shit. Holy cow, this dude. Like, wow, this is a major fan service for the ladies out there. No joke. Anyway, he's hooked up to some tube because he's still injured and he's still trying to like get better. And the whole thing has to do with like the blood transfusion. So like we apologize because blood transfusion saved our life. And he's like, no, it need to happen. It's fine. I'm not worried about it. He talks about how he was getting better and that he could get off the machine like for like a couple hours at a time. But then with the power outage and everything, now he can barely do it for like 30 minutes. And he almost died during that time, but he's going to be fine. He'll recover and every this stuff. And he tells us all the stuff about the arc, all the good and the bad, how like beating the heretics and raptures kind of like gave people like a lot more hope and trust in Nikke's generally. But they also demonstrated that we can fight off the heretics, which is like not wholly true. But now people are going to start demanding like another reclamation of the surface. And so they want to put us in charge of that. Because it's been like 100 years since we were on the surface, right? And then the second reclamation war was such a disaster that that it put people off. But now it's like, wait, there were two heretics here. They got beat off. There's like pilgrims here. People have a lot of questions. People are going to want a lot of stuff. And if like they don't start getting answers, there's going to be a lot of issues. And so we're going to, at some point in the near future, we're going to go find Rapi first. But we need to go to the surface and establish some sort of like outpost up there with the optical camo. And that will allow people to like get resources and kind of like get the people to like calm the fuck down so they don't riot and like stuff goes on. He then jokes about like, all right, I got a meeting, because every time he's like, I gotta go, I got a meeting, and then we're like, yeah, and he's like, no, I just need to get back, I need to rest. So we head back to the outpost and meet up with Ainz and Neon. Neon has completely forgot what actually happened. We get confused because she talks about how she beat up like Chatterbox, and that's not what happened at all. And so Ainz is like, let me talk to you outside real quick. And she explains that oftentimes with Nikke's, the nymph will fabricate memories to protect them from like PTSD stuff. And then what about Ainz? And she's like, no, I remember everything. It was crazy. She's super disturbed about getting cut in half, and then about Rapi and about what happened and elevator and everything. And so, but it's whatever. We got to go find Rapi, and then we'll come back and figure out the rest of this shit. So we head over to the elevator, and we're prepping to go. And we're talking about how the government thinks that we're going after Doro because she went up there with Rapi as well. But in reality, fuck Doro. Also, Ingrid gave us a box with an injection gun that we're supposed to use on Rapi. At that point, we're about to leave, and Ainz is like, what the fuck are you doing here? And we all turn, and it's Sayun, and she's all beat up and coughing and shit still, and she has like crate of supplies, and she's like, I brought you all this stuff, and we're like, no, and she's like, please take it, and we're like, no, go fuck yourself. And so she drags us off by ourselves, and she tells us that we have to help her, because if we don't help her, that Enoch passed like her decision, and the decision is that she's going to be turned into a Nikke, and the only way she can not be a Nikke is if we like essentially forgive her, or like she helps us out and we determine that she's helped us out enough that she can remain viable. And we're like, this sounds some crazy bullshit. So we step off to the side and we ask Enoch about it, and she's like, yes, I gave that judgment to her, but it's a lie. And we're like, what? You can't lie. You have to make things based on like objective reality or whatever. And she's like, no, I'm doing it by subjective reality now, because we're like, what the fuck? And it's like, I need her to have some sort of redemption, and I need to gain control of the situation, but I can't like remove the CEO of Missless because it would cause too much problems in the arc. And I don't have that power. And she describes how there's like a whole cabal of like an like an Illuminati in the arc that she has like no jurisdiction over whatsoever. They can kind of do whatever the fuck they want. And so because of that, like the rules don't apply to everybody. So there's no way to like really protect the arc. And if these assholes think they can get away with stuff, they're going to try. And then that's going to cause like a lot of problems going like in continuing keeping the arc safe and whatnot. So now she's going to start acting like a god essentially, and just being making her subjective reality like objective reality. And we call her out on how that's like crazy and how she's not a god and how like she's going to become power crazy and whatever. And she's like, that may be true, so I need you to keep me in check. And we're like, well, what are we going to do there? How are we going to do that? And she's like, if I ever cross the line, go talk to Enoch. And we're like, you mean the other one, the one in the simulation room? And she's like, yes, go tell her and she'll help you. And we're like, okay, we'll do that. We head back over to the counters and like, okay, we're going to take all the supplies and saying you're good, get out of here, you scamp. And then Neon's a bit confused and stuff, but then we leave. Once we're all up on the surface, we talk about how we have no backup, no operator. We're just looking for Rapi. We're searching around. We almost step into like a landmine because we're like distracted, not reading the map correctly. And Neon corrects us, and we all like take a breath. We talk about getting Exia to help us because it's unsanctioned, right? So we can't get shifty. But we can't get her either. She's helping Innik, and then we kind of like freak out about like, no, we need to fucking get Rapi. We don't have time to like get help. We don't have time to do any of this stuff. We got to go. And so they're concerned, but it's like, all right, let's go. So we continue to the place where the elevator was ejected. There's tons of raptors around there. We joke around a little bit about asking them kindly to leave, but then we go ahead and fight. Afterwards, we're just observing all the destruction that's going on and whatnot. And then Ainz is like, those monsters really did like a number. And she's talking about Doro and Rapi and Chatterbox and the two heretics. When Doro comes in and she's like, yes, you called. And they're like, holy shit, you're alive. So we chat with her. We learned that Rapi like really took care of those motherfuckers, like beat the shit out of them. And then like Doro got left behind because she can only push herself so far before she like ran out of energy. But then Rapi just kept going. And then there's like questions back and forth about what the fuck is Rapi? What's going on? What about the scarf? And like, I have no idea. I've never seen the scarf before. Like, what is she? How can she do this stuff? And they're like, I don't know. She's our friend. And Doro's like, all right, well, I'm going to come with you because I have a lot of questions and I need answers. And as we continue to travel, Doro and Ainz chat some more. They just chat about random stuff. They talk more about the scarf. And she's very concerned about the scarf. And Ainz is like, well, I have no idea. Because we've never seen that scarf before. It just like appears sometimes. And then it's something like, why? Why do you care so much for the scarf? And she's like, do you guys know about Red Hood? And they're like, no, what's that? And she's like, never mind. And then Hood asks her about transforming. Like, why do you have like a cute mode and a battle mode? Why don't you just stay in battle mode all the time? And then Doro mentions that the battle mode is more powerful and that she likes the cute mode because it allows her to like torture her enemies more. She's a fucking psychopath. But Neon's like, oh, that's like me and my firepower. I don't always use full firepower because sometimes I'm trying to do other things. And she puts out her hand to shake, and Doro's like, what? And then Neon's like, we're the same. And Doro's like, okay. So then they shake. As we continue on, the temperature, like the heat in the area gets a lot hotter. We're like, oh, Nihilister must be around her. So they get ready to fight, but then we find her and she is fucked up. Like if you're looking at the screen, or if I don't know if it's gonna be around here. Honestly, I don't spend that much time. I just throw like pictures up kind of haphazardly, but she looks like all bent out of shape and like her boobs are like in the wrong place and like she got fucking eaten up. Like we talk about how like she looks like she's been eaten as well, and she's like taunting us, but then like kind of crying, but at the same time like just fucking kill me. And then her and Doro go back and forth a bit, and she again just was like, just kill me. And Doro's like, I have a better idea. So she reaches out to Johan and Inherit at Eden and is like, hey, got some coordinates for you, there's a gift here, you need to come get this. And then they're like, hey, where are you need to come back here. And she's like, I got some stuff I gotta take care of first, and then I'll come back, I promise. And then she disconnects. And then we're about to leave, but then because we love all Nikkes and heretics no matter what, we take out some camo, like this camo tarp, and we toss it on top of Nihilister so no raptors come by to like eat her. And then as we're leaving, we hear her like ranting and then laughing, and there's like, it mentions that there's a lot of pain behind like the sound of her voice and all that stuff. Meanwhile, we switch back over to the Ark and we find Anderson, Dobin, and Birmingham all chatting about Doro, about her intentions. Dobin wants to go fucking kill her, and the other two are like, absolutely fucking not. And then Dobin's like, well, I want to do an investigation on her. And Anderson's like, no. And then Birmingham's like, no, I agree with him. And so he gets outvoted this time. And so Dobin goes off to do the investigation, and Anderson is just silent for a little bit. But and Birmingham's like, well, I got some stuff I got to do, I'm gonna go. And he's like, hey, we erased all the information on the Goddess Squad, right? And Birmingham's like, yeah, there's no information about it anymore anywhere, it's all been completely destroyed. And Anderson's like, good. And then Birmingham leaves, and then he's like, fucking Doro. He doesn't say it like that, he's like, Dorothy. And we know in our hearts that he's a legendary commander, so obviously he had a close relationship with Dorothy back in the day, and now he's super concerned. That's never been canonized, but that's like the working theory for me at least. Anyway, so back with the counters, Dorothy and us, we are walking through like complete carnage. Clearly Rapi was beating the shit out of heretics here. One of them mentions it looks like a tornado hit here. Dora then makes a comment about how Rapi, how lucky it has been that how rare it is for the counters to be so successful. She talks about how like beating heretics, surviving all the things against Oz, defeating like top level raptures, all this stuff, and they start to get kind of cocky and self confident. And then she like brings them down by saying like Rapi's covering a lot for you guys, and then she also mentions how we as a commander, how we vastly improved since the first time we met her. And then she directly says that Ainz and Neon are holding back Rapi and the commander. And then the girls and Doro get like into it real hardcore. And we try to like break it up a little bit. They really go back and forth. They talk about how there's some like funny stuff where it's like, what do you do that Rapi can't do? And they're like, well, we're fun and we like to wear colorful clothes and it's stuff like that. And then Dora's like, you need to step it up. And then they snap back and they talk about being a squad and being a team and how like Rapi would not say anything about them being a burden to her or anything like that. And this goes on for quite a bit. And then after that kind of back and forth, we check up on the girls and they talk about how mean Doro is, but how she's also kind of right. But then they're able to like pep talk each other and feel a little bit better. But there's definitely some seeds here about how Ainz and Neon recognize that they're not really carrying their weight in the overarching scheme of things, and how Rapi and us, we tend to like really cover down for them a lot. But then they talk about how like for right now they got to find Rapi, and Rapi believes in them, and because Rapi believes in them, they're gonna find her because she told them to find her because she knew that we would, so we're gonna go. And then while we're going on this, talking about being a squad and a team and all that stuff, Doro's watching, and then she's thinking about the goddess squad and about Inherit and stuff. She's like, because she's such like a lone actor who just like does things so selfishly, so it kind of gives her some questioning thoughts. Later on, after we've like set up camp, we're getting ready to eat, and there's some like more fun where it's like Dora's like, I'm not eating anything from the Ark, and they're like, oh, we got some Splendimin, da 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 da, and they're like, well, what is Inherit eat? And there she's like, they only eat real food, and they're like, wow, that must be like a lot of work to carry all that shit around. And Dora's like, yeah, it's kind of excessive. Eventually we find some chocolate in this crate, like real chocolate made. And so they hand it to me to decide what to do with it, or us, and we give it to Doro, and then she tries it, and it makes her almost mention the goddess squad. It's like, this reminds me of the goddess. Wait, never mind. And like, what are you talking about? Goddessisium? Are you going to eat Goddessisium? And she's like, whatever, I got to go. And so she gets frustrated and goes to check the parameter and ignores us. And then the other girls are concerned and like, hey, maybe you should go check up on her. We're like, yeah. So we go chat with her for a little bit. We ask why she's at the Ark, and then she finally reveals her dastardly plan that her overall scheme is to take down the Ark. And we're like, I don't believe you. And she's like, why? And it's like, because you fought Nylister. And she's like, oh yeah, maybe that's whole part of my scheme. And then we're like, well, why would you fight her again? Like the second time you could have just noped out, and Nylister and Infidelia would have like destroyed the Ark. And why would you do that? And then she gets perplexed and says she doesn't care if we believe her or not. And then she like storms off. The next day, we find a smoldering campfire that's like right on the open. We're like, what the fuck? And there's also tracks. There's 2 larger tracks and a smaller track, like walking around this, like, it looks like a lake, I think is what they said. And then Dora's convinced it's related to Rapi somehow, and then we all hear like a rifle shot go off, and Dora recognizes the sound of the rifle and like takes off. And so the rest of us follow after. Meanwhile, dun dun dun, we get Chime. Yes, fucking Chime. I love Chime. She's the best. And she's with Crown and Red Hood. Apparently Red Hood was out here chilling, and then Crown like bumped into her, and then they were talking, and then Crown wanted some roasted potatoes, so Red Hood made the campfire to roast the potatoes, and then Chime showed up and was like, the fuck are you doing? Why are you setting up a campfire to draw these raptures? What's wrong with you two people? And she made like Red Hood put the fire out, and this whole thing's like wacky comedy, and it's like part of the reason why I love Chime and Crown so much. And when we get to like Last Kingdom, it's going to be so excellent because that is the best event ever, because it's all Chime and Crown all the time, and it's so fucking good. And we're familiar with Chime and Crown from Marion's like second what's it called, the first attraction or whatever, the side story. But, there's like a lot of hilarity of them going back and forth, and Red Hood just being like, I'm getting a headache. What the fuck's going on? Because then Chime's still yelling. And at some point she's like, why didn't you finish making the potatoes? And she's like, because you put out the fire. And she's like, no, you got to make the potatoes. If that's what her highness, her royal grace needs, then that's what you should do. And stop being such an asshole. And then, well, why did you tell me to start a fire? I was supposed to start a fire. And Crown's like, I was testing you. And it's like, what do I get if I win this test? And she's like, you're going to be my servant. And it's like, what the fuck? And then Chime's like, oh yes, that is the greatest reward of all. So that they spot us, and Chime mentions that there's other Nikkes, and that they're not supposed to engage with other Nikkes, and so maybe we should destroy them, or maybe we should just run and hide. And then Red Hood sees Doro, and they embrace. And Doro gets like, she's like, oh my gosh, Red Hood, something, but then she gets super upset because she's like, wait, you're dead. Who are you? What are you doing? Like, who is Red Hood? Like, why are you here? And then finally we catch up. And we're like, holy cow, who are you? And she's like, hey, what's up? And we're like, where's Rapi? And she's like, oh, Rapi? It's like, oh, you know Rapi? And she's like, yeah, she's kind of like I'm like her mentor slash guide slash friend and all that stuff. It's like, well, where is she? And then she's like, oh, she's right here. And then Red Hood points to her chest. Right? And that ends the story, right? Which we'll pick up again in a couple of weeks with number 26. But excellent across the board here. So good. But go ahead, like, share, subscribe, comment, and I'll catch you guys later. Bye.